This is my podcast, The Bloody Vegans. You're very welcome to it. Each week I'll be travelling ever deeper into the world of veganism, discovering along the way a multitude of viewpoints from the political and ethical to the practical. I'll be doing this through a series of conversations, each aiming to further illuminate my understanding and hopefully yours of all things plant-centric. And this week's no different. It's episode 53 this week, so we're just over a year now. This is the first one of the second year. How exciting that is. This one's with Alan Twigg. Alan is the author of Why Go Vegan, which is an interesting book because it's, there's so many books out there that are non-fiction when it comes to veganism. They often talk about, the lifestyle, the politics, the ethics, intersectionality, all kinds of different things. And Alan has come at veganism from a different angle. He's come at the writing of a book from the point of view of writing a fictional tale about a character called Peter who is going on a journey to discover veganism. There's lots of kind of similarities, parallels to Alan's own journey throughout this book, and it was specifically designed as an audiobook as well. So a fascinating kind of story that Alan's got, how he got here to this place of writing this amazing book. He's also a podcast host himself and is the creator of a new online course as well. All of this, by the way, can be found at alantwigg.org. And I won't steal any of his thunder because he's going to tell us most about it in a moment. So without further ado, here's a conversation between me and Alan Twigg.
Yeah. Well, I have my daughter really to thank for it. Leah's my daughter. She's now 22 years old, and she always loved horses, and many girls don't. They have this thing with horses, and she became vegetarian. This was like back in 2013. We were living here in Tenerife. And then she went on a visit to Germany, came back, and my wife and I and Leah and Tom, my son, we were sitting together here in Tenerife having a meal outside. And she said, "I've got to tell you something. I've decided to go vegan. I'm going to adopt a vegan lifestyle." And it was one of those moments, where I was just horrified. Oh no, I could just imagine my daughter kind of wasting away in front of my eyes. And, and I said all the classic things, but where are you going to get your protein? You can't live on a vegan diet, and all of this stuff. And she said, "No, Dad, it's not like you think. It's going to be okay. I'll be fine." And so she started doing it. She didn't seem to waste away in front of my eyes, but she kept it up. And then I think in 2016, right at the beginning of 2016, we were on holiday, and it was literally the first day of the holiday, and I was sitting around the pool, and she came up to me and slapped down this book on the table in front of me and said, "Here, Dad, I know you're into health. Read this." And it was Michael Greger's book, How Not to Die. And so I thought, wow, this is a great big book. And I'm not a reader anyway, I prefer audio, but I started to take a look at it and I started to read it. And the first chapter is the chapter on heart disease, where he explains how his grandmother was taken in, given basically 3 months to live, but she didn't go down the traditional path, but she went on a plant-based diet and had this different approach to her health, and she survived and went on to live 30 years, another 30 years. So, and that book it was like, I read the whole book literally within 3 or 4 days, and I am really not a reader, but I just couldn't stop turning the pages because it was just like a whole new paradigm was opening up that I'd never thought about before. And so much started to make sense because my own father, he'd had heart disease, and he'd been to the doctors. This was he got heart disease, I think, first in his I know, age 63, 64, and he'd gone to the doctors and he'd had the standard, you need a stent, Mr. Twigg. And then he had the stents fitted. And then a couple of years later, the stents aren't working, you're going to have a bypass. And he ended up having a triple bypass. So I'd seen all that happen. And at no point did anybody really point out to him in a serious way, diet or lifestyle change. And reading this book, it just fascinated me. I just thought, well, if you could avoid having your rib cage sawn open and having somebody taking veins out of your legs and stitching them onto your heart and all the pain and, that you went through, why wouldn't you do that? And then, so that's really how I got started. And literally that very evening, a night or the second night after I'd been reading the book, my daughter said, "Hey, Dad, are you interested then? Do you want to see what we can eat at the buffet?" Because we were in a hotel, with a buffet service, and she just went and started showing me, these are chia seeds. What you can do with these is this. And she was kind of instructing me on what I could eat. And, and this, Dad, this is rice milk. Have you ever seen this before? Oh, no. Right. Okay. And yeah, so that's how I got started, really. Yeah.
It sounds like it was, you sort of got there kind of intellectually through the book and so on. But I'd imagine the learning journey in terms of what you could eat was still kind of quite ongoing. How long did it take before you sort of became comfortable with that? Appreciate you had your daughter as a bit of a guide.
Well, not really, because she at that time she lives in Germany. My daughter lives in Germany. So actually, here in Tenerife, I live together with my wife. And at the time, it was a family holiday, but she was literally only there for a week. So she flew back to Germany. So I didn't really have my daughter. But she just had time, before she flew back to Germany, she just had time to go around the supermarket with me and show me things that I'd never seen before. Things like chickpeas and, nuts and oats. And so I got this shopping trolley full of ingredients that I'd literally never bought before in my life, this shopping trolley full. I had no idea what I was going to do with it all. And I remember we were standing at in the queue at the checkout, and she proudly then started saying, "Hey, Dad, look what the others have got in their supermarket trolleys. Dead animals." And so, that was, but yeah, I had no idea. I got home with all this stuff, and, yeah, it was tricky at the beginning. It was really tricky, yeah.
What was Tenerife like? And I suppose that was a few years back now. So how's it evolved over the last few years? Is it quite a vegan friendly kind of place?
Not really, no. I think the Spanish. I mean, I've always kind of had a theory that Spain seems to be in so many things, or not everything, but in a lot of things, it almost seems to be 10 years behind in so many ways. I always have a feeling that Spain's catching up with other countries, and it is getting better here now, but there's nothing like the selection you've got in the UK. If you go into the big supermarkets here, so Mercadona, it's it's the Spanish equivalent of Tesco's, perhaps. And there's not really a great deal in there, when you compare it to what's available in UK supermarkets. So it is improving. It is improving, but they're behind. So it is more a case of really learning how to cook. There are health shops where you can get all the seeds and everything else, but the tofu and the rest of it. But yeah, the Spanish are not as far on as the UK. Also, a lot of Spanish people really don't know what vegan means. They, in Spain they have they call it jamón. It's I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like a leg of it's a pig, isn't it? It's a pig's leg, and they have it like on a stand. You might have. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I've seen it. There's a shop in that I always walk past rather forlornly in near Covent Garden. That is a purveyor of it, and it's always quite a grim-looking sight. These pig legs in the window, but yeah, I'm
Well,
aware of it.
Well, what they do is what they do is they take that gruesomeness a step further. They kind of, so the meat of the leg is down at the bottom of this stand, and the hoof part, so the thin bony part of it, is in the air, and they slice it off, and this is like a real delicacy in Spain. You find it everywhere. But the strange thing is that when we started first going in Spanish restaurants and saying, we're vegan, and they'd say, well, what does that mean? And say, well, we don't eat animals. And they'd say, well, but you can still have jamón. So they really they don't. A lot of Spanish really don't understand what veganism is. They kind of understand vegetarianism. That on an intellectual part, in an intellectual way, but they don't kind of get why you would want to do such a stupid thing. But they understand that. But vegan is you have to really be careful when you're ordering things to say, oh, if I order a salad, for instance, and I say, just veg, you have to say, and that means no eggs, no mayonnaise, no tuna, because otherwise they'll just put it on. So. Yeah, but we found that the good thing about living here is there's lots of restaurants from different parts of the world. So there's lots of Asian restaurants, some Lebanese restaurants, Indian. So if we're going out, we know places where we can go that serves good food, and it's accidentally vegan, if you like.
Yeah, I'm with you. I guess there's. I was just thinking about it from the sort of UK-centric basis. I'd certainly say in the few years that I've been vegan that there's definitely a rise in convenience, a rise in junk food, definitely, which has its perks, obviously, but also has probably a bit of a negative side. The initial kind of health benefits of veganism, and most of them are still there. You've still got the no cholesterol and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But certainly you can eat quite unhealthily now through vegan junk food. Have you found that in your experience living over in Tenerife that you've probably gravitated a little bit more to the home cooking, the whole food plant-based diet? I suppose not having those options.
Yeah, we started off a little bit on the junk vegan. It's a process. So I've never been a cook, or I certainly didn't used to be a cook. But I think realistically, if you want to eat well as a vegan, certainly here in Tenerife, you have to cook food yourself or prep it. Sometimes if I'm feeling lazy, I might make a big pot full of something that'll last 2 or 3 days. But. We do go out a couple of times a week, and we'll have a meal in a restaurant that's vegan. But I do. Yeah, I've certainly started cooking a lot, and it's really amazing. So many vegans say it, and I'm going to say my diet's actually never been better. Not just because of obviously the cholesterol and the saturated fat and all the rest of it, but just literally the variety of things that I now eat, and my awareness of what I eat. I never had that awareness before, really. I used to hear these words banded around, saturated fat, but I never really understood what that meant. It was only when you kind of, you probably went through the same kind of thing. You announce to the world that you're going to try it, and then your daughter or whoever sends you that, oh, Dad, you have to watch Cowspiracy, and here, this is Forks Over Knives, and you go through those documentaries, and you think about, this was my experience anyway, and you think about things that you literally never thought about before, I was 50 years old when this happened to me, and you're thinking, how is it possible that I could get to 50 years old and be so ignorant? Really, it was. That was like the most shocking thing for me, to realise the level of my ignorance.
Well, that's so true. I think for everyone, so many people I've spoken to, In fact, the vast majority, we've all been through that. For me, it was 3.5 years, and I was saying to somebody on an episode I was recording the other night, 3 years, 6 months, and 2 days ago, or whatever it was, I had no idea, about any of this stuff. And, like you say, I totally share the same view. Before this, I'd never looked at what I particularly ate. He had a sort of a very crude idea of a balanced diet, and a healthy diet generally meant, you eat chicken and fish, and you hear these kind of things, don't you? That you sort of parrot back. You don't necessarily know what any of the detail. I haven't ever researched it, so I'm totally kind of with you on that experience. In terms of your experience then leading to you wanting to become an author, is that something that's quite new for you? Have you written books before, or was it very much the veganism was the catalyst for you?
That's a good question. Okay, so I got thrown out I'm from Sheffield in the north of England originally, and I got thrown out of school age 16. Probably one of the worst pupils that, I was really a bit of a rebel, and they said they wanted to see no more of me. So I was gone, and I was a petrol pump attendant, and then I was a lorry driver. But then I started a business when I was 24 and moved to Germany. And in Germany, after I'd learnt the German language, I actually started a translation business, which I did the translation business actually is still running today. My wife runs it. The reason I'm telling you this is because through the translation business, first of all, because I wanted to, we employed people who were professional translators, but we were getting quite, reasonably straightforward texts. But I realized that my knowledge of English wasn't actually very good. The grammar and, having dropped out of school and being a really terrible school kid, I really, it was poor. So I got all these books and read through. And it's really fascinating as well. The school, in 8 years of school, failed completely to teach me anything about English or grammar. And yet, when I wanted to translate, because it meant earning money and actually, doing something with this knowledge, I was able to learn really quickly, get a grasp of the grammar and all the rest of it. So yeah, within a few months, I was happy, and I started translating. The feedback was great, and I was actually a translator from German to English for a good 5 or 6 years, like literally every day. And we were translating stuff for the United Nations, for the Berlin Library, all sorts of things, and the text kept getting more and more complicated. So I was literally writing every day, but not as an author. But if you've ever done any translation, you have to be creative, because a lot of what especially if they're like marketing, most texts have got a purpose, or certainly for our customers. If it's a company, they're wanting to sell something, and it might not be a product, it might be an idea, or it might be, all these things. And so, and you have the German language, so you have German, you understand what it says in German, but often you can't write it like that. Well, you could literally write it like that, but it wouldn't do the job that it was supposed to do. So as a translator, you're kind of, okay, so how would I say that in English? How would I, bring that across in English in a way that would convince the person, because I had that practice for 6 years, of doing that work. So I'd never actually written a book, but I think I had the tools, the writing skills then to be able to do it. If you follow what I'm saying.
No, totally, yeah.
So with why I didn't really want to write. I'd not really got an idea to write a book. It was a result of a few things really. Just after I'd gone vegan. Okay, so. So I also dance Argentine tango. So my wife and I started dancing Argentine tango in 2013. Most people don't know what that means, but it's a dance that was, until Corona broke out, a really living dance. So it's a dance that's done socially. It's not just something that people dance at a wedding once in every, blue moon. There's literally a tango scene, and it's a real living dance. So we go all over. Normally we're in different countries dancing Argentine tango, And the reason I mention that is because we got into organising. I got so enthusiastic about it that I got into organising tango holidays, and here in Tenerife, and searching for the perfect venue for people to come and stay in Tenerife and dance tango. I stumbled across this yoga retreat, really amazing place, lots of energy. So for some reason we started doing yoga as well. Just before I got to writing the book, I'd done, 2.5 years of yoga. I was really enthusiastic about the yoga. I was enthusiastic about the tango. And we were actually at this tango event in Italy, and we danced until 2:00 in the morning. And the next day I was walking down into Vicenza, which is in the north of Italy. And we were walking down into the town centre, and my wife and I went into a coffee bar, and I just said to her, you know what? I'm thinking of writing a book about this, being vegan and what it means, and for people who've no idea. And so she said, what's it going to be about? What's the story? And it's great when somebody asks you a question. You're probably very good at this, having done so many podcasts. But when somebody asks you a question, you're forced into thinking about it. So this, and we literally had, just 2 or 3 hours of just brainstorming. We went out of the cafe, and we went for a walk back to the hotel, which was a good 1.5 hours away, a good walk away. And the story just formed. And by the time we got back to the hotel where we were staying, it was more or less finished, the outline. I knew, what I wanted the story to be about, and so on. I was really excited. I couldn't wait to get back, actually. When I got back to in Tenerife, I started writing straight away. And
the books, you going down the fictional route really intrigues me, from the point of view that, being in the sort of the quote unquote vegan community for a few years now, and doing the podcast, etc. All of the authors pretty much I've spoken to, and certainly, the vast majority, all of the books, in fact, I've read on veganism have been factual, have been around a subject, whether it's intersectional veganism or, about particular diets or, patterns of nutrition or, all these kind of things. So to come from a place of fictional narrative is really intriguing to me. What was the particular driver for that?
You are good. Okay, so I started. When I started in business, I had also no idea about business. I'm uneducated. I have no education, so I started listening to all these kind of. I don't know if you know them. There's lots of self-help books. Like there's Brian Tracy and. I don't know. Tony Robbins is a really famous one.
It's a big old market, isn't it?
Yeah, and I started listening, and then they're not really showing you the nuts and bolts, but they're kind of, they're kind of motivational things. But one of the best books that I'd ever heard on business was done as a story, and I've listened to that. I'd listened to that book several times. And it just seemed to work so much better than all of the others that I'd listened to. Effectively, it changes the way, I don't know, I think when things are done as a story, your mind is in a different place to where it is if it's a factual book. It's just a different state of, that's how I personally feel it, that if it's a story that you're listening to, that that your mind is not in I don't know, it's a different state of understanding. And for some reason, I just found that a really nice way to learn. And it also made me think a lot more than, and the way that I wanted to write the book was, I wanted to write it so that, so the problems we have as when we're vegan, people automatically get defensive, don't they? They don't want to, we've all been there. You don't really want to think about, how the animals are raised and what's done to them. And you don't really want this person telling you, that he's, or she's morally a higher place than where you are. So, and I got that because, I'm a working class kid from Sheffield. So I wanted to write it I wanted the book to take all of that defensive-ness away. So the protagonist, the guy around the story of the book is based around Peter, who's my age, or he was at the time, 53 years old, and this guy is basically, he's no idea what we talked about earlier. He's no idea about nutrition. Food is just food, a bacon sandwich is a bacon sandwich, and it's just how it is. It's normal, natural, and necessary, and that's where he starts his journey. So when you're listening to it, you can identify, if you're not a vegan or you're not on a plant-based diet, you can identify with him, and then you follow him, you follow his story, and it's done in a completely non-aggressive way. And and that's what the story does. So it takes you. So just briefly, I'll explain it. If I don't know if you've listened to it already, but so Peter starts off. He gets a diagnosis of heart disease, and he goes to see the doctor, and they give him tablets, and he's told that it's pretty serious, and it's probably going to have a stent, and maybe even he will have to have a bypass. And obviously, this is not good news. And he's got a young daughter, and he's got a wife, and he still feels as though he's got a life in front of him, and he's shocked by all of this. And he discovers that there's a different way. And this is the nice part about the book, is because he meets other people along this way. So first, after getting his diagnosis, he meets then the marathon runner, who, through the yoga class that his wife does, the marathon runner tells him that, there's a different way, and points him in the way of the nutritionist. But the marathon runner has also got a story, because the marathon runner is also plant-based now, So he's got his own story, but he points him over to the nutritionist. And the nutritionist, she's also got a story that she tells Peter. And then she gives him the information, that nutrition could be a way of handling his heart disease. And he's having a chat with his wife, and then he goes to get the first ingredients, and he meets the farmer, and the farmer's also got a story, because the farmer's no longer raising dairy cows. He's now just growing organic food. So the farmer has also had a history of why that's happened to him. So from the farmer, then there's the environmentalist who talks about the environmental side of the whole thing, and then he goes to see the yogi again. And then there's a really good scene in the book. It's my favourite actually, is the lads in the pub. It's chapter 7, and it's based on my mates in Sheffield who are, to be fair to them, the real Neanderthals. I can't even speak. Neanderthals, sorry. And they're so that's a great chapter, because Peter's kind of where I was at some point, where you're kind of thinking, yeah, this makes so much sense. This is something I want to do. And he's enthusiastic about it. And then he runs into his mates in the pub who are just giving him the objections, one after the other. Where are you going to get your protein? And he's trying to bat away these objections on the limited knowledge that he's got. And so that's basically how the story goes. And we follow Peter then. he gets a goal for himself. He adopts his diet, and it basically takes people through the journey, but in a non-aggressive, judgmental way.
I love this idea of the narrative, and I think, as you're saying it there, I think it kind of makes sense to me insofar as I think when you're reading something factual, you're kind of almost analysing the now. You're in the current space. You're very much, is my perspective on the world as I thought it was. But as you described the story there of your book, it puts you in a creative space. You're thinking about possibility. You're thinking about something that doesn't exist, and therefore you're in a far more creative, open-minded, perhaps forward-thinking space than you would be if you're reading something factual, where you're looking at the here and now. So I can see how you came to that conclusion now. As you say it, whereas perhaps I hadn't before, and I definitely. Now again, reflecting on it, thinking about some of those self-help books, particularly those in business, that the ones that have been effective to me as I think back, or even the most popular ones, the 1 Minute Managers and the Who Moved My Cheese and those sorts of things. They're often narrative based. Actually, the most effective ones, the ones that stick. So it does make absolute sense. Was there a similar sort of quite by designed purpose around or catalyst for you going audio based? What was the particular drive to do that?
Simply because I love audio. Like I explained, I can write and read and write. I have now got a grasp of English and English grammar, and I can do all of that. But I so much prefer to listen than read, and I also think that it's the way the world's moving a little bit as well at the moment. I think the audio is becoming far more important than it was. And really, so I think I just wanted it to be an audiobook because that's how I personally like to consume information. And I just thought that I could write it as an audiobook, that I would feel more comfortable writing it for audio rather than as a book. Because to be honest, I've not really read a great number of books in my life, so. I just felt more comfortable with it like that, basically. There's also a German version, by the way. I had it all translated into German, and I had a professional German speaker, narrator, narrate it, and it's also doing really well on Audible DE, actually. I've got some great feedback from it for the German version, yeah.
Fantastic. I'm intrigued as to the process of writing a book with audio in mind first. What does that process look like? Is it you literally have to type it out and write yourself the script almost, or were you almost recording as you went and editing in that way? What was the creative process like for you?
There was, just simple. I just wanted to keep it simple. I had. I think simplicity is maybe because I'm a simple person, I don't know, but I prefer things to be not complicated. I think sometimes things can get really, over complicated. And I also had this idea of it being for people like me, so people who are maybe not, So in the world of Argentine tango, and also, I think to a great degree, also it seems in the world of plant-based diets and vegans, it does seem to be a fairly kind of middle-class, well-educated thing. I don't know that many, working class sort of, normal people who are vegan or plant-based. Maybe that's changing. I hope so. But that was also. My journey, my personal journey has been really interesting. And I just know, from my friends or from relatives, and that there's an even greater need for normal people to have this information than for the the well-educated, they kind of will look after themselves anyway. But I know people who are, really overweight or have got diabetes too, basically just killing themselves. And they don't really have the information, just like when I said, that I was completely ignorant, that was the truth. And, and I've not been I started as a lorry driver, but I've kind of moved up slightly in the social, in that this how do you say it, social mobility or whatever. I've made progress on that front, but even so, I was, really ignorant of nutrition and all that. So part of my writing the book and why Peter is a postman. The guy in my book is a postman, so. I wanted the people in the book to be also relatable. I maybe went overboard with the yogi in there, but anyway, it was just because I was enthusiastic about yoga at the time. Well, I still am, to be honest. But no, seriously, I wanted it to be more a book that anybody can listen to, that's simple, that brings a message across, and it's not too, down the rabbit hole, complicated.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it often can be can sort of find, we can find ourselves in these sort of pseudo intellectual debates, if you like, in the world of veganism, and actually sometimes it's a simpler pursuit than we make it.
Yeah, for instance, I know somebody who's he's been really, eating himself to death, basically. And he's now got type 2 diabetes, and, he's had a heart problem. He's young, 50, so he's still, you would say, for, by today's standards, relatively young. And, he's going to this is somebody I know in Germany, and he's going to the doctor, and then they're giving him these tablets, and then they're telling him he needs to go on, they have like they call them I've got the German. Sometimes when you speak two languages, you get the German word in your head and you can't think of the English one. But they like a clinic, so where he'll spend 3 weeks, and they'll give him treatments, and they'll do a bit of physio with him, and they'll maybe tell him a little bit about what he should be eating and everything. But and obviously he likes his food, and for him it would just be so easy for him to just kind of just ditch all the meat and dairy, and I have said it to him. He's not very open to it, but literally somebody in that position could, he can still eat as much as he wants. He would lose so much weight. He would feel so much better, and he wouldn't have to go hungry. And that's just a simple message, and it hasn't really resonated with him. But I'm sure there are people out there who perhaps it would resonate with, people who think, well, that's great. I could eat as much as I want. And I will probably, if you're in a place where you're really overweight, you're really obese, and I'll probably lose weight and I'll still not feel hungry. Surely that's a good offer, right? And but it's a simple message, but nobody says it. So
yeah, I think there's a really sad sort of lack of information around that kind, the diet and nutrition side of things when it comes to health. You talk about, particularly in Peter's story, in the book, that surgery, stents, etc., is always the route. And we don't necessarily share the simpler route, which is, look at your nutrition, and you can probably live, have all the pleasures that you wanted before, but in a vegan way, and live a much healthier lifestyle. And it's interesting, you're talking about it from a class perspective, and obviously from a UK point of view, there still exists a real kind of class system, and I definitely agree with you. I think often veganism can be associated with sort of the middle class, if you like, and isn't necessarily something that's, I don't know whether it's marketed at or not spoken about. I don't know,
it's culture.
But yeah, well, yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, go for it. Be good to hear your perspective on why you think that might not be the case in sort of the working class community. Why veganism is not there.
It's culture, because I'm real men don't eat cabbage and vegetables. Real men eat meat. They eat bacon. They eat beef burgers or whatever. That's what a real man does, and he drinks beer. And I know that's perhaps not as strong as it perhaps was in the 1970s, but it's certainly still there. And I think that the more middle class parts of cities, so the more educated you become, or the more middle class you become, the less likely you are to have that kind of your culture becomes more than beer and bacon, if you see what I mean. And so there's a strong. I think that for men in particular, almost. I really do think that some men would probably find it difficult to admit that they were going vegetarian, simply because because people would think of them as being less of a man, So that's also addressed in my book. That's how he starts that. Pete, the very first scene is that he can't get an erection. So, and at the end of the book, he manages to solve the problem. So, but it's also, I also tried to address that in the book, this cultural block that is definitely there. That's why the scene with the lads in the pub, and people forget, this normal people, or people who have not been to university, or my everyone goes to university now, but they didn't, when I got thrown out of school, but even then, people weren't going to university as they are now. So, I don't know how many millions it is, but it's a huge part of the population that that have this kind of cultural stone around the neck, if you like.
How do you think that gets removed? That cultural stone, do you think it's? And I appreciate that is a very big question, but where do we even start with that?
Yeah, it's knowledge, isn't it? I think just knowing that you've been lied to. So one really good thing about, so normal people, I got it. I've never had a conversation like this before, Jimmy. Excuse me, but so let's say working class people. Okay, I think in general are very skeptical about the authorities. Wasn't it Ronald Reagan who said the most feared 7 words or 9 words in the English language is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, So, and I think that attitude definitely exists, in the working class, very skeptical of authority. They're only out to kind of help themselves. They're not going to come up and they're not going to do anything good for you. There's no one helping you. I think that's definitely a positive, because you can turn that and say, well, look, they've not only lied to you about everything else, but also about diet. Because diet is the it's the thing that's, food is the essential of life. Obviously, we all need to eat to live. So our diets are very close. We're very connected to what we eat and what we eat and so on. And, we've had this indoctrination, haven't we? I mean, I don't know if you had it, but certainly when I was at school in the 70s, the mornings, classes used to stop at 10:30 in the morning, and all the kids used to go and drink milk,
Yeah. Yeah.
And just milk is, I think, a really good example of how, we've been told, it's great, this calcium, all this protein is good for your bones, you're going to be strong and all this. I used to roll around on the floor after drinking milk with stomachache, and I was probably I now know almost for certain I was lactose intolerant. But, you know, oh, you got to drink your milk. Okay, boom, another bottle down, and then more stomach ache, and you know. But it was advertised. It was like promoted also by the school. I mean, if the school's telling you this stuff is so healthy that you've got to drink it, everybody's got to drink it at 10:30, and kind of a religious thing around the milk crate. Yeah, where was it? So you know, we've been lied to. A lot of these things that we've been told as being like essential for health and well-being, you know, weren't actually as healthy as we were being told, and it continues today. And I think that if people, you know, in any walk of life can grasp that, then I think that's like a starting point. Because they've been telling us all this rubbish. I can just imagine, you know, once you know the knowledge, once you know it, then I don't think you're perhaps as worried about it not being manly if you've been lied to, and then you can say, well, you know, you can keep on eating your bacon butty, me old mucker, but I know what's good for me, and I'm not eating that rubbish anymore. You know, so maybe that's a starting point. That was what I was hoping for anyway with the book, you know.
But that's really fascinating. I think you might be really onto something with this, because
I was just trying to answer your question. That's all.
But I think it's spot on. So, you know, you think about milk, and I definitely had the same experience as you. You know, class stops. There's a milk monitor. There's a whole privilege around bringing the milk in. The milk is associated with strength and growing bones and growing kids and health. And you know, I'm thinking about, you know, Thatcher, the milk snatcher, and all that kind of stuff. You know, the middle class, the affluent took away the milk. That continuation of the middle class trying to take away meat, you know, veganism being, you know, vegan activists being seen as these middle class sort of chin stroking kind of figures, trying to say to people how they should live their lives, is probably in a way actually making people want to double down on the, you know, well, I distrust that voice. I distrust those folks. So actually, you know, if we hear more people from, because the opposite is true. You know, like you say, the lie is actually that the meat industry is good for you and the planet and the animals, and clearly it's not. So maybe, you know, more voices like Peter's in the book. You know, the working class, you know, a normal guy, to use that term. Is exactly what we need, you know, and I think you're really onto something. You know, I know you know that because you wrote the book, but it's you know, it's definitely occurred to me in this conversation.
You know, there's, you know, my face. I'm on Facebook, and my friends. It's just a fascinating. I've got people, because I dance tango, and because I spent 18 years in Germany, and because I've got friends from all classes. You know what I mean? I've just my friend. If you were to try and take my group of friends on Facebook and say what type of person is Alan, you wouldn't be able to. You know, they're all in there. So I've really got friends who are, you know,
the algorithms can't work you out.
No, they definitely wouldn't be able to work me out. Absolutely not. Several languages. You know, I mean, like literally from all over the world, but also from Sheffield. So it's really. So I see it all, and you're absolutely right when you said earlier, just a moment ago, that there's a tendency for, you know, that you know, for normal people to think that because, you know, what you said is absolutely right about, you know, these vegans, these middle class people trying to push, it's okay for them, they've got the money, they can afford it, they've got the time, you know, they've got nannies bringing up the kids, and they're not living in the real world. This is just some sort of utopia that they're trying to push on us. When actually, in a lot of cases, when I see how my dad, you know, my dad is just the classic, you know, just such that classic kind of working man. I mean, my dad is as rough as they come, really. I mean, he was. he was brought up in Pittsmore in one of the real working class parts of Sheffield in the 1940s, where no money and probably just enough barely shoes on his feet, that kind of poverty. So, but his mindset was if he'd have gone to the doctor and the doctor had said to him, Mr. Twigg, you can avoid all this pain and horror by going on a plant-based vegan diet, my dad would have said for sure, no, I'm not doing that rubbish. Give me the pills. Give me the pills and give me the heart bypass. So he wouldn't have taken, he definitely would not have done that. But I do think that there are, like I say, I've got this feeling that there are others out there that maybe wouldn't react in that way, that would say, oh, well, I'm ready to do that. But yeah, you coming back to what you were saying, that's really true, that there's a reluctance for normal people to take it seriously because they think it's a fad. They think it's something that the middle class or the powers that be are trying to push on them for some unknown reason. And I absolutely believe that, but it's not true. More than I think that normal people probably need the information more than anybody, really, because they do tend to perhaps not pay attention to what they're eating and not really understand, just like I didn't understand, what it was all about, with the fats and trans fats and all the rest of it, and in this conversation so far, we've not even mentioned the animals yet, which is also like a really important thing.
Well, it's absolutely huge. I mean, often, people say versions of the phrase, you come for the health and stay for the animals kind of thing, or versions of. And I definitely think, it's sort of a triumvirate of reasons, isn't there? Sort of health, the planet, or animals, and whichever one you come in for, you end up discovering the rest. I definitely believe that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I also think, and I'm going to drop something on you now. I don't know if you've thought about it, but I mentioned I practice yoga every morning. So I get out of bed now and I do like 15 minutes of, half an hour of meditation and half an hour of yoga every morning, And what I noticed when I started doing yoga is because, I don't want to labour the point too much, but I'm from Sheffield, working class kid, so I'd never really thought about spirituality or anything like that. But when you start doing yoga, the objective is to free your mind. It's to be able to perhaps see your thoughts or get above that chatter that we've all got in our heads all the time. And in yoga, the official line in yoga is that if you want to do yoga properly, you have to be vegetarian. You can't eat meat and be a yogi. You just can't. You can do the moves, but that's not the aim of it. And a lot of people actually say, okay, to do yoga, you need to be vegan. And I made that kind of link really very early because I'd just gone vegan, and it was just after that we started doing the yoga. So it was a little bit of a coincidence, but I started doing it. And I don't know what so when we moved to a completely plant-based diet, I know I kind of thought to myself, what change would I notice? What would I notice? Would I have more energy? Would I sleep better? Whatever. But then after 6 or 7 weeks, I noticed that I was more calm. I got a sense of calmness about me that hadn't been there before. I was able to focus better, concentrate better, and I just seemed to be more at peace, if I can express it in that way. Less anxious, let's put it that way. And, if you think about the world and where we are at this very moment when we're recording this, kind of, right in the middle of the corona film, theatre, whatever we want like to call it, it's almost like the world's got this, the whole world is anxious. The whole world seems to have got this I just wonder if with the people eating meat, and we're consuming it in such volumes now. People, breakfast, lunch, dinner. There's always meat on the table. It's full of mercury. If whatever's in there from the fish. The animals are full of antibiotics, and we all know how they're treated. So they grow really fearful. And then, of course, when at the moment of slaughter, they've got this, this adrenaline, haven't they, rushing into their blood. And when we consume that, surely we're consuming part of that as well, the anxiety, it's perhaps no surprise that we're all kind of polarized and fighting each other. And I think that's part of that. I seem to be, with what's going on in the world at the moment, I just wonder whether it's also got a connection with, with eating meat and so on. I know that's a bit woo-woo. I hope I didn't.
Do you know? I don't think it is. I think we're probably kind of made to feel like it could be, but with that, like it could be a bit woo-woo to use the term. But I think that's because we're so disconnected from the fact that what we eat has anything to do with how we feel, or how we sleep, how anxious we are, all these kind of things, and that is the most bizarre thing. I think we care more about the petrol we put into our car, and the quality of that, than we do the food we put into ourselves, which is deeply troubling. So I think you're absolutely spot on. You can't consume violence without it having some kind of effect on you, and you can't, the antibiotics and all kinds of other kind of chemical ingestion, if you like, it cannot be good for us. You combine that then with all of our communication being done through 240 characters, or pictures and tweets and so on. Like, I think the whole thing is sort of designed to perpetuate anxiety, really. And I think if there was if more doctors prescribed veganism and yoga, I think we'd probably be in a much better place.
Did you feel that at all? Did you did you notice a change?
Yeah, I think like you though, it took I think probably when people ask me, what were the benefits, I think you start to parrot back a little bit some of the things you've heard, I slept better and I had more energy and all the rest of it. And to be honest, most of those things were true. But I definitely think after a few months, I probably felt like I feel like I have more clarity, if you like. Like I just feel like I can think a little bit clearer, that my mind's not quite as busy. I feel a bit more objective. I don't know, those kind of things. Again, that probably sounds a bit hokey, but I'm happy to sound hokey, because it sort of speaks to the truth of my experience anyway.
I think we need to start thinking a little bit more about. I mean, I'm not spiritual, and I'm really not that, or I never had been that. That I never thought really much about it. But if you think about how we've arrived at this place now where, there's no spirituality, is there? And now the big God is science, or even face masks seems to be becoming the new God. So, it seems that humans somehow need something to believe in. And at the moment it seems to be science, or, but I'm not sure whether that will take us in the place we want it to go. If we just follow science blindly, whether that's, what we're really meant to be doing, or are we meant to be being more human, especially at the moment when you think about, surely we're meant to be, together more, and seeing friends more, and seeing families more, and all these kind of things. And we seem to be, at the moment, to fill this void, this spiritual void, we seem to be pushing scientists and science and tables and graphs and Excel. These seems to be becoming the new things to worship. So yeah, but I think that would change as well if people were more the great thing about becoming vegan and plant-based, as you know, is that you start to question so much. And I just think that the reason that I'm raising these kind of weird kind of ideas now is just simply because by becoming plant-based or becoming vegan, you do start to question, or it certainly happened to me, I start to question like a lot more than I used to. I don't take things at face value anymore, and I am definitely more skeptical on a lot of things. So yeah, I really think that we've lost a lot. You know, even in my short lifetime, there's, you know, I think we've fallen. You know, I think that we need to kind of regain that, and I think that through just something as simple as noticing animals and suffering and you know, and what we're doing to the world just because of our diet can help address that in a way. Yeah, I don't know. It's an optimistic view, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's you know, without the kind of optimism or the hope, I don't think we have a lot left. So I'm with you. I think it's important to have that hope, to have that optimism, definitely around, you know, and you know, doing things like yourself, whether it's the book, whether it's the course, trying to reach a different audience to perhaps the one that you're seeing in the sort of vegan community at large, I think is fantastic, you know, thing to do. It's active, you know, and I think that's, as vegans, I think we probably all have a sort of responsibility in whatever way it is to be active, you know, in the community. So appreciate you.
We're setting an example, aren't we? Another thing that I can highly recommend to people is dance. Really, I mean, you know, Argentine tango is it's just unbelievable. You have a connection. It's almost like meditation as well. A lot of people don't know much about Argentine tango. I didn't, but it's also connection between you and the woman or the woman or whoever your partner, your dance partner, for, you know, the 12 minutes of the dance. Because in tango, people tend to swap partners. You know, but it also dance, that connection to the music. We've lost that as well, and that's something else. The working class, you know, I mean, who dances in Sheffield, you know? I mean, I think the whole tango community in Sheffield is made up of around 30 people. You know, there's over 1 million people around Sheffield, and there's just 30 people. So, you know, and also dance is the same thing. It's for some, I had a really fascinating theory, but also dance is something that's in us. We're all born to dance. I know virtually every man you ever meet will say, oh no, I can't dance, I've got 2 left feet and all the rest of it. But it's not true. You know, very, very few people have actually got no rhythm at all. One of my friends was one of those people, but the vast majority of people have got rhythm because it's in us. It's just like, if you can listen to music and you can appreciate music, then you can probably dance. And we are meant to dance. And it's so freeing, you know, but you say to anybody in, I mean, not just the working class, but any community in the UK, or you know, any male kind of enclave, you know, about dance. No, it's just women just dance and everything. But that's also denying who we are. You know, in Africa, the men that get the most, you know, the best women and the most women are the men, you know, traditionally who can dance. You know, if you can move well, you know, you are sexually attractive to women, which is a top tip there for anybody who's single, maybe wondering what they can do. But it's what I think why I'm mentioning it is, it's like we grow up in this culture. I know why I'm mentioning it now, because we grow up in this culture, don't we, where, you know, you eat meat, it's normal, natural, necessary, you drink your milk, you do it. I mean, you grow up and men don't dance, you know, it's just women dance, and men might dance for a couple of years until they've pulled, and then that's it. You know, and we don't really question that either, that we're kind of, you know, suppressing. I mean, in the north of Sheffield, you know, I grew up And I literally thought that I was meant to play football. That was it. That was my cultural, that was what I was in. That was my whole point of being on the planet, was to play football. That was it. That was what I was born for, kind of, that was, but nobody ever said, hey, what about dance? Nobody's born to play football. That's not in us. We've invented it 150 years ago, whatever. None of us are innately born to play football, but that's what we do culturally. You follow me? We kind of, you're going to play football, okay? I'm talking about if you're in Sheffield now.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
But how many children, how many male kids, how many men are ever here? Well, actually, you've got this gift within you that you can probably do with only a little bit of practice that will give you so much pleasure. And nobody ever mentions it. It's something else that I discovered very, very late in life, 47 or something, that it's great, So yeah, I'm on this kind of journey of discovery at the moment, Jim. I don't know how to put it. So
no, I think you're right. It comes back to that sort of similar point of, we're told what's right and wrong for men and for women. Stick in these kind of gender stereotypes, stick in this class sort of system and this class strata, and this is how you should kind of live. That's kind of marketed at us, and it's been so successful that it doesn't require anybody to sort of trap us in it. We trap ourselves in it, I think. We, like you say, and we trap ourselves in groups. You think about that conversation in the pub in the book. That's the trap right there. It fills you with dread to think, I couldn't possibly step outside of what's normal and say to this group, does anybody fancy going to an Argentinian tango evening? Followed by a vegan meal. You just couldn't imagine saying it. But why not? What's wrong with any of those things? But it's but we are so trapped by that. Your friends hold you into it. Your family holds you into it. So, I think more power to you for raising the message in the way you are, and I think it's incredible. I think the book is a fantastic resource for it. The course will no doubt be too as well, and I think excitingly there's a podcast as well that you've just launched on top of all of that. So incredibly busy spreading this awesome message, Alan.
Yeah. Well, I want to do now more. What I enjoy. I spent many years translating. It was okay, but I didn't really enjoy it, in the same way. But I enjoy dancing. I enjoy organizing events, and I enjoy, writing a book or doing a course or podcasting and spreading a message. I think, things that you're enthusiastic about. So, I suppose it's probably the same with you. I mean, why are you doing a podcast? You must be enthusiastic about it as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, after years worth of episodes. So this is the first one of the second year. This episode. So this is episode 53, and I think I wouldn't devote so much sort of time to it if I didn't love it. It takes up a lot of time, but it's lots of fun and feels. Well, I hope it's valuable to what people other than me doing it, but it certainly has been to me. Like just every guest I speak to, I get something different. I learn something new. It's another perspective, and for me, it was a bit of a tonic of, an anti sort of social media in a way. It was like the long form interview, an actual conversation. I think was what I realised I was craving, as opposed to snippets of opinion and then counter opinion, which is what kind of I think social media gives you, and I don't think it's particularly healthy for you. It's just polarising, whereas conversation, you can agree, you can disagree, but all of it makes you think, So that was certainly the route for me.
No, absolutely. I see that as well. I think it's really nice when, I can't have stopped. I used to listen to Radio 4, Today's Show. I can't listen to that stuff anymore. interrupt as soon as somebody tries to make a point or explain. I mean, they've been invited on the Today Show, so they must have been invited on for a reason. Obviously they've got a message, but so often they're not allowed to actually bring that message across because they'll be interrupted, and it's just awful. I find that very disappointing, to be honest, at the moment. I don't know if it's got worse or my perception of it's changed, but that's so I also look now, I really do search for more longer conversations where people are actually, because sometimes it takes a little while to get into the flow or actually be able to bring your message across. It sometimes takes a little time. You can't just do it in a minute. So
no, you definitely can't. Not with any sort of nuance. And I think that's the world is far too complicated to be sort of boiled down into minute-long sort of conversations. But I think you're right. I think sort of traditional forms of media sort of mimic what they see as popular, which is the sort of social media stuff. Whereas I think what I kind of love, I think about. The sort of counter to that argument around what has the internet and the spread of information given us, is I think it has given people the power to create, whether it be, I'm going to make an audio book and put it out on Audible and, on SoundCloud, and, I'm going to make a podcast, that sort of power is in anybody's hands. Whereas I think, probably 30 years ago, it wasn't, you'd have to have been selected almost to be a person who could speak to the masses, if you like.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, it's a gift and a curse.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're still sorting it out as a society, aren't we? We don't really know where it's going. There are so many positives, but there are so many negatives as well. So, but I think it's amazing, isn't it? When like I don't get into arguments, on social media. I really don't. I've managed to, as as a vegan, it can be difficult, but I've managed to negotiate those waters, and I don't get into that. But if people, when we're talking, like now we're having this conversation, you're automatically far more respectful of the other person, that you're speaking to, or they're having a conversation with. And in real life you are as well. Nobody acts like they do on social media in real life. I mean, that's just not how it works. If I was to go out tonight and somebody was, somebody wouldn't just say the things that they do on social media. You would have a conversation. It's not real life, is it? It's
no, it's like everyone's driving down the M4.
Yeah.
They're all in their cars. Happy to say anything to anybody, but the moment you got out of the car, it'd be a very different conversation.
Yeah,
and I think that social media sort of put us all in these sort of virtual cars when we're having these conversations with people, and it's not particularly conducive to a decent debate. And then sadly, I think you see politics trying to copy it because it sees it as that's the way to get attention and the way to get votes. And like you say, like even a program like the Today Show tries to mimic that polarization, and but I think to your point, we're still sorting it out. It's still so new. It's like a blink of an eye, really, in sort of culture. When you think about something like dancing, like you say, that's culturally has been in us since probably day one, versus
it's incredible. You can in Argentine tango sometimes you can agree to dance with somebody without speaking to them. So we do it with eye contact. You catch somebody's eye, you agree to a dance. A dance will last then 10, 11 minutes, and you're with that person that you've maybe never met before. Might be from a different country. You don't know. You've no idea. You dance together for 12 minutes. You sometimes never say a word to each other. And then at the end of it, you thank you very much, or maybe not even that, and you part, and that's it. So you've just like literally been dancing with somebody for 12 minutes you've never met before, you don't know anything about them, and sometimes there's a connection there or not, but it's just so it's human. It's what we need. It's nourishment for us in so many ways. And if you look at how things are going at the moment, all of that is being taken away from us, in so many ways. I mean, more and more, even before coronavirus started, more people kind of on their screens, on their devices, apart from other people. And now we've gone to a whole new level of dehumanization, with the, social distancing and the masks. And, I don't know, I'm not sure it's going to be good for our mental health, because, we are herd, we are, aren't the herd immunity, but we are a herd, that's how we are. People need to be together. And I'm not sure, I hope that if there is a solution to the whole coronavirus thing, that we can perhaps not just return to where we were before, but I hope there's a more of a desire for people to do more things like dancing, cultural things, also to question more. After all of this that's gone on, surely people will maybe start to question what's going on, more. Let's hope so, for both being plant-based and vegan, but also, and on a human level, it's what we need. We need connection. And I think we've been disconnected, even though we're more connected than ever before, it's really strange.
I think that, as an optimist, I suppose the last 5 or 6 months, certainly for me, was a chance to get off the perpetual treadmill of life, if you like, the work and so on and so forth. And although I was working from home, but there was just so much more time. With we all commute such distances and so on these days, and live on your phone and all the rest of it, and just being around my immediate family, I think there was it hit a pause button for me, and definitely made me make some real, actually quite big life decisions as a result. That I'm not going to go back to the life I was in before, because actually I've realised that there's so many more things that I get happiness and enjoyment and sort of fulfillment out of. So I can only speak for the circle I speak to, but I do think there is and I hate to use the word awakening, because it's certainly one that's connected to all kinds of bizarreness online at the moment. But but I do think people are having a bit of a moment of reflection, and I hope that lasts. I hope that we sort of come out the other side of this and say, actually, the things that I really missed were human connections. The things I didn't really miss were, commuting or buying stuff, because, certainly for me, all of those things were sort of buying stuff and, endless cups of coffee and so on were, sort of a form of medication, if you like. You're sort of just medicating yourself against the sort of the stresses and strains, whereas the sort of the real thing you needed, the tonic you needed, was sort of good food and family, personally. But I hope people go down that sort of route of reflection. So let's hope so, eh?
Yeah, definitely. And there's no better place than to start with with your diet, and I think it's a really good place to. I think I have no idea, but I'm guessing that most people who are on a vegan diet have questioned the whole thing a lot more than perhaps most.
Yeah, I think so. It makes you innately question, doesn't it? So time's got away from us here, Alan. But it was lovely, absolutely lovely chatting with you. It was sort of, again, as with all these episodes, it just feels like a privilege and an education to speak to people. So and definitely this is no exception. So thank you very much. It'd be good to just from you just get where folks would go about picking up or I suppose, how do you pick up something that's audio based? Getting hold of a copy of the book, and maybe finding out a little bit about the online course that you're running. And maybe even checking out the podcast too.
Yeah, it's really simple. First of all, there is an ebook version of the book, and if you go on to Kindle, or on Amazon, you can get it printed out. So if anybody does want to read the book, you can just go onto Amazon and get a print version. They'll do a paperback version and send it out. So it's there in written form as well. But everything that you need to is on my website. So the Plant-Based Heroes course, my book, details of the podcast, which is still very much in its infancy. It's all on my website, which is Alan Twigg. So my name, ALAN Twigg, .org. And everything's on there. So just go there and you'll find a page on the book, a page on the course. There's a page on the podcast and a few other bits and pieces on there.
Amazing. Well, Alan, look, thank you so much for your time. Stay safe and hopefully speak to you again.
Jim, that would be really good. Yeah, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure for me as well. It's also a very interesting experience. And yeah, like I say, thank you very much and I appreciate it.